Hello, everybody. It's Friday. That means it's time for another topic of the week. So, first things first on player driven and community driven content. Last week's topic. So, a lot of good thoughts on it, and I think that there was a fun mix of sort of opinions to, no, I would never do it, or yeah, I'd try a bunch of it, as I expected. But I think the thing that sort of popped out to me was it's often not largely one person's choice in the group. And I think this is something that on reflection, as I thought about it, I was like, well, yeah, it made a lot of sense. And that is that most people said if their group was into it, whatever their club, their group of players, then they would also give it a try. And I think that's interesting. So it seems to me that it's a lot about the circle you play in, right? Your own little teeny tiny meta community. If that little group is willing to give alternate rules or stuff like that a try, if they're into those sorts of things, then you're in a good environment to do it. If your friends aren't into it, or the group you normally play with, then you're probably not going to, because in the end, I suspect that one of the big challenges, and it aligns with my past expectations of making these things, is you don't want to force the people to have to be zealots and proselytizers for you, right? It's really annoying. Because you don't want to have to spend, you don't want to you want to just play your game. You don't want to spend 2 hours before your game trying to convince your friends to play the game in the way you want. So I thought that was an interesting point, and it's something that I think is an interesting challenge for all people who make community-driven rules. So, but let's turn to this week's topic. So we sit here about a week out now at this point as I'm recording this from the official release of 40K 8th edition. And we're going to talk about that more next week. But for this week, we know sitting on this eve, we see a storm of 40K on the horizon. And for those people who have more of an interest in Age of Sigmar, we know we've probably got a General's Handbook 2 somewhere mixed in that storm, in the tornado of 40K. But I think it's pretty obvious we know we're going to be looking at mainly 40K content for a while to come. Probably over most of the summer, which is fine. Because certainly they've had to put up with the similar thing in AoS. But what they've shown, what Games Workshop has shown they're willing to do, is have these small little 1-week releases of maybe a battle tome, maybe a kit. You think of the Beastclaw Raiders. You think of the Savage Orcs. You think of the Flesh Eater Courts, right? These kinds of things. Where maybe it was just a repackaging of all existing models. Maybe there was one new kit or a new way to build a kit. And so that's this week's topic. My question is this. Since we know we're not getting anything major for the summer, but it's a perfect opportunity for them to do something small, low impact, and easy, what force would you love to see get its own little battle tome or something like that? Maybe there's a new kit in there. Maybe there's just a new way to build it. I was thinking about this because we kind of talked about the Spiderfang Grots being a candidate for this on this week's Warhammer Weekly. And I think that it is a great faction for that. I think another one, honestly, would be the Dispossessed, the old dwarves, right? Because a lot of those kits are still largely perfectly playable and perfectly good, with just a little bit of keyword each, swippy swappy and stuff like that. You could then have the full triumvirate of dwarves out there. You could have your classic dwarves who've hidden deep in the mountains or something in the mortal realms, and that would be fine. I don't see any reason. We saw they could be interesting enough to be out there. But what do you want to see? If you could pick a faction, right? And the trick here is it's not going to be anything massive. It can't be a whole new release. I want to know what they're going to do with Slaanesh or with Tyrion and the new High Elves or Dark Elves or stuff like that. The whole new release, because that's got to be its own big thing. Something that's more of a known quantity. And I suspect this would be a great thing to do with Death as well, let me say. We proved that already with the Flesh Eater Courts, where we took a small subset of Death in sort of the ghoulish, faction, and built into something that's really cool and unique and that a lot of people have attached onto. And I think there's probably a couple other sub-factions in Death you could do that same thing with. So, what's your pick? And tell me what, how do you want to see that play out? How do you want to see that story evolve? What's the story, the thrust, the theme behind your little faction build out in your battle tome? What have they been doing? So, I thought that'd be an interesting topic, something to think about, something to hope for as we go into the long summer of 40K. As always, put your thoughts down there in the comments below, or if you want to make a response video with your own thoughts, hey, post that up, post a link, and I'll link it down below. So you can always come back to this video and see everybody's responses. All right? Look forward to the conversation. As always, we'll see you next time.